So as you know, recently, Donald Trump and his whole gang were here in Korea for APEC, and then they officially just left. However, today, guess who arrives? Yes, it's Pete Hegseth. We're talking about him on our news. He's hanging out in Korea. I think he's here for a couple of days. And you know Pete, he's probably like, hey, what are you guys doing partying without me? Where's the beer? Right? There he is right there. I just... Every time I see Hegseth or any of Trump's people, it's just so embarrassing. If you're curious what Pete's doing, he's here for a photo op, of course. And also, they're going to be negotiating on coordination between the U.S. Forces and Korean forces. Now, this always puts Korea in a tight spot. Why? Well, the U.S. and Korea are tightly interconnected both militarily and economically. And then by Korea, aligning with the U.S. Militarily, actually pisses off China. And so then China will boycott various Korean goods, cut off, Korean companies to Chinese markets, and that matters, right? China is a massive market. And so recently with APEC, Korea's goal has been, how can we reopen China market to, Korean brands? And so this is actually really interesting. These are the gifts that they gave each other when they met. This is President Xi of China and then President Lee of Korea. And what you just saw there, and I can actually go back and show you, this is I believe it's a Go board, like the game. So if you guys are familiar with Go, you'll know it. And I think they also give them a plate. And essentially when you give these kind of gifts, everyone is, trying to interpret, okay, so what is the meaning of this gift, etc. So that's the gift from Korea to China. And she was actually really relaxed during this meeting. He presented teacups, a calligraphy pen, and Xiaomi phones. And I want you to listen to their exchange. You can hear them talking, actually.
乌龙茶它就是这个杯子都很小，都是很浓的茶，沏出来的很浓，就拿这个小杯子喝。 보이차 우려 먹는 것도 좋을 것 같습니다.
이어 준비한 선물은 샤오미 15 울트라 스마트폰 2대.
我们小米生产的旗舰手机里面，它这个面是韩国的产品，这个曲面是韩国的产品。
최신형이 아닌 작년 모델을 가져오며 한국 기업 LG 디스플레이 부품이 사용됐다고 강조한 건데 두 나라가 산업 생태계에서 긴밀한 협력 관계에 있다는 점을 강조한 걸로 풀이됩니다.
Now, the reason why I showed you that is I just want you to see them talking and how they relate to each other. And actually, both President Lee and President Xi made a joke. The joke was like when China's presenting phones, China was like, hey, these are coordination between Chinese companies, Xiaomi and LG, right? Korean company. And then President Lee's like, basically, are you spying on us with the phone? Is the phone bugged? It was kind of that implication. And then President Xi made a joke of like, oh, well, I, changed the back door for you. And I'll let you guys interpret that how you want. In Korea, we're like, okay, so what did she say? Like, are you spying us? Are you making a joke? And my wife, I asked my wife, she's just like, they've just been talking about the backdoor stuff. So I know you can think of other ways of that, but I'm just saying in terms of, spying and hacking, that's sort of what it's all about. This is also the gift from China to Korea. It was like calligraphy pen. And I think that is really cool wood board. And basically, again, this is all about trying to develop relationships between the two countries. I'm sure you guys just saw this several times in the USA, right? Korea gave Trump a gold necklace and a gold crown. And you may not have seen this one. This was the gift from the USA to Korea, which was a baseball bat and with a baseball ball. And yes, it's a stupid gift. And yes, that's what Americans do. So I wanted to see the contrast because it matters when you're talking about, the kind of homework you do on what's an appropriate gift, what's the important meaning of this, and how can you build relationships between the two countries. Regarding China and Korea, though, I want you to hear what they said about each other because it's actually very formal and very different than, say, the Americans, right? And then go the gift again and listen to their voices here. This is actually at a dinner thing.
비롯되는 것이 아니다. 여러분 모두는 각자의 분야에서 양국 간의 우정과 신뢰를 두텁게 만들어 주신 한중 관계의 주역들이십니다.
시 주석은 각 나라 유학을 다녀온 통일 신라 최고 문인 최치원의 시로 화답했습니다.
挂席扶沧海，长风万里通的名句。如今中韩友好继续焕发出生机 和活力。
And I'll translate what they said because I think it's really interesting and it shows how it's very different than how U.S. and Korea or U.S. and China communicate. President Lee said, "The horse's ability to run does not come from the strength of a single leg. Each of you has your own strengths in your respective fields." And basically, this is referring to an old Chinese story, actually, that is taught in Korea. I asked my wife about it. She knew the story, and many countries in Asia will know the story. It's kind of like a Pegasus story kind of thing, like a really fast horse. And it's a way for countries to share, like, hey, I'm going to compliment you with one of your stories and say how it means for the countries to come together. And then President Xi said this, "I put up a sail and set sail on the sea, and the long wind blows for 10,000 miles. Today's China-Korea friendship continues to exude vitality and energy." And basically, this was sort of taken from a poem that a Korean had written when they studied in China. And so they carefully selected these things to, talk about strengthening Korea and China relations. I know it gets complicated when we talk about this stuff. And then they agreed to talk further. So that's basically what that is. It takes a long time to do a trade deal, and neither country is going to come out and just say, hey, it's not like Trumpy. We're like, hey, we got this deal and we're best buddies. They just tell you what happened. Now, what's also going on in Korean news, it's interesting. They keep talking about Trump tariffs. So let me show you a bit this here. This was basically saying, hey, everyone, Trump's got these tariffs and they're not that popular in the USA. They were telling us numbers like 33% of Americans support it, and then 65% disapprove. So that's sort of stuff that they show. They're also talking about Trump, here in Korea, they're talking about Trump and the tariffs may get overturned by the courts. And so basically what we see every day is this, who Trump is. He's a moron. You guys know this already. But it's important to show that outside of the USA, the rest of the world can see it like really, really clearly. I honestly think it's only in the USA where you have your Fox News and people who just make stuff up that say tariffs are awesome and Trump is awesome, but it's just not the case outside. What's also interesting as well is, if you guys may not know this, Carney actually met with China also. And my understanding is I think Carney's going to accept an invitation to go to China and meet. I'm not sure if President Xi is going to come to Canada. If you guys have heard anything about that, you can let me know. But basically, Canada is in a similar position as Korea. You don't necessarily want to choose either China or USA. You just want to trade with everyone. I think that's a pretty fair thing to make. But in the Trumpy world and sort of how Trump wants to do it, he's like, well, if you're not going to be with me, I can't be with anyone, or that kind of stuff. This is also what Carney had to say about this.
This meeting today is long overdue. We now have a turning point in the relationship, a turning point that creates opportunities for Canadian families, for Canadian businesses, and Canadian workers, and also creates a path to address current issues. So very pleased with the outcome of the meeting. Our officials are instructed to work at pace on issues moving forward.
So I think they're going to meet, Canada and China. Probably Carney go to China. That's what he said earlier. I also want to show you this. So this came out today. We just heard about it. So basically, you may not know who this is. I'll explain. So that's JYP, a famous music producer. There's a couple big music producers here. SM would be one. JYP would be another. And basically, I'm thinking that they're going to start doing concerts again in China. And this matters because, as I was saying, China's been close to Korea because Korea's been too close to the USA. I don't want to say too close, right word. We'll say close to the USA. And what really pissed off China was there's like this THAAD, so THAAD missile thing. And I think that was like 2016 or 2017. And the Koreans and the Americans are saying, well, this is, for defense against North Korea. And China was like, no, this is like offense against China, and you're going to track us, and you're going to threaten us, that kind of stuff. So that will be tension for a long time. And this is sort of, again, the dilemma that Korea has with China is, how can you be close to the USA and also be close to China at the same time? And then you got the military concerns, and here they're showing you a video of footage of like missiles and stuff. There is no solution necessarily at the moment that China's said anything about like, hey, well, tell North Korea to be peaceful with you, something like that. I guess it's not. it's just a really complicated issue. And I think, part of the North Korea thing, and anyone, you could read it any number of ways. It's destabilizing the region, the best way to describe it. On our news, they were showing a bunch of, sort of high-tech footage. And the basic gist of it is that the China-Korea relationship is Korea is kind of replaced the USA in terms of like, designing products and stuff like that. And China will continue to be the manufacturing, hub. But China also has, designing companies as well. So like a Xiaomi is like a direct competition to say, Samsung phones or whatever. This here, and I'd just like to show you guys different stuff from the Korean news. This is when President Xi, right, so China, arrived to meet President Lee in Korea, and they gave him the sort of a, similar thing that they did with Trump, where you bring out the, like the historical, clothing and do like a whole parade. And that's sort of how things are done here. It's very different than in the USA. It's just different. This is also the news. I just want to show you guys what's going on. This is Trump's university backlash drives U.S. researchers towards Europe. And, what you're seeing, say, here in Korea or even Canada, where, more money and trade are going to go to other countries, you're also seeing it from, people are leaving the USA. And basically what the story was is that more people are applying for grants in Europe, and it's up quite a bit. I'll read a quote here. It says, in general, it's not positive what has happened. This is coming from someone in EU research commissioner. They say, we are not celebrating what is happening with scientists, but we want to provide those scientists with opportunities to work, to continue their work. And they were giving numbers of like, some for young researchers, I think is up like 20% applications. A lot of them come from the USA. And then like, say, senior researchers, it was up like 33%. And again, many coming from the USA. And this is up percent from last year. And the basic gist of it is just more Americans want to leave and go to Europe. And you may apply for a research grant to go to Europe for like a couple of years, something like that, and then come back to the USA because that's your home. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to leave forever. But a lot of people want to leave during the Trump years, which I completely understand. So I just wanted to share that with you. This has also been in our news as well. Jensen Huang was here in Korea, and NVIDIA's been like an all-out PR blitz. So here, this is like an old movie where essentially they're talking about how Korea's developed. And if you know anything about Korean history, it's developed really, really fast. And as I always tell you guys, it continues to develop even further, especially in high tech. Jensen Huang was actually talking about it. You can have a listen.
젠슨 황 대표도 APEC에 참석해 한국과 협력하기로 한 이유를 비슷하게 설명했습니다. 탄탄한 제조업과 인프라, 소프트웨어를 갖췄다는 겁니다.
Korea has abundance of deep technical and science capability, and third, manufacturing capability.
게다가 AI에 적극적인 정부가 있습니다.
Literally the first government to invest in 50,000 GPUs for the Korean government. And so that's a very big initiative.
한국의 26만 장의
And so what they announced recently, they were talking about 50,000 there, but I think it's like an even bigger number. Samsung and Hyundai CEO, so the Samsung CEO and the Hyundai CEO met with Jensen Huang, right, the NVIDIA CEO, and I guess they're going to get a bunch of chips, and we're talking about building data centers and such over here. If you don't know, Samsung acquired Boston Dynamics, so that's robotics, and just there's a lot going on. The market is extremely competitive for all sorts of technologies, and this is where developing partnerships with China is an interesting thing because you're doing two things, right? One is you're competing them with on the design level, and then China's still basically manufacturing much of the stuff. So we manufacture stuff here in Korea, but they do a lot in China, and then here they're having meetings about AI and stuff like that. So the bubble, I'll just be frank with you guys, the bubble keeps getting bigger because I personally think it's all a bubble, but this is where we're at right now. Jensen Huang was also doing this sort of hype festival kind of thing, the best way to describe it, a live show in Korea. You can have a listen to what he has to say.
To create the world's first video game Olympics.
편지를 받고 처음 한국에 왔을 때 엔비디아는 작은 회사였습니다. 젠슨 황 대표는 PC 게임 열풍이 불던 한국에서 미래를 봤다고 합니다.
Without PC gaming, without PC bungs, without esports, there is no NVIDIA today.
And so then lately they've been telling us the history of NVIDIA, and I actually didn't know it. So I guess NVIDIA was struggling early on, and Jensen would travel to Korea quite a bit. And then early on, like way back when, with StarCraft and such, he started selling graphics cards to essentially PC Bong. If you know what that is, it's like an internet cafe, a PC cafe where young people, or not young people, but anyone can go and play video games with your friends. And so that's a different culture here in Korea that doesn't necessarily exist in USA, but they have it quite a lot throughout Asia, where people like to go to these cafes and just play video games with each other. And I think those are old pictures of Jensen Huang in Korea. And there was an interesting story as well. It was something where the current Samsung CEO, I think it was his dad or grandfather, I think it should be dad, I guess was writing letters to Jensen Huang like way back when. So I didn't know this either. Like Jensen Huang had a long history of developing with Korea, because video games are huge in Korea, and that's sort of where we're at. So just want to give you guys a different perspective. Korea's moving ahead with technology, so is China, and at the moment, unfortunately, the USA is closing borders and wanting to go backwards, and it's hard. I'm an American, and it's hard and it's sad to see what Trump is doing in the country, because I can see what other countries are doing, and I can see people are just, how to say it, moving past Trump, right? It's obvious, and it's sad because the Trumpers don't see it, but what can I do? I just tell you guys what's going on. So that's my thoughts on this stuff. I'd like to hear yours, and I'll catch you on the next video.